We go?
We good? Okay, I'll go, it's 7 o'clock. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the regular Board of Education meeting of the Kaneland District 302 Board of Education. We'd like to inform all board meeting attendees that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members. And it'll be on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. Please rise and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And a roll call when you're ready, please.
Mrs. Witt.
Here.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Here.
Mr. Carey.
Here.
Dr. Lawler.
Here.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Here.
Mrs. Simmons.
Here.
Mrs. Junk is absent.
With 6 members present, right? Yep, 6 members present. We do have a quorum. Is there anything anyone would like to move from the consent agenda to new business? Okay, hearing nothing, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
And a roll call.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye, motion carries 6-0. Move on now to the board and superintendent salutes. I'll pass it off to Dr. Layton.
Yes, thank you. And I will also pass it off in a second. But as you know, typically this time of year, we invite our fall athletics and activity sponsors and athletes and athletic directors or principals to come out, share our highlights from the fall season. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Faulkner, and he can share some of the highlights here from Harder Middle School. Thank you, Mr. Faulkner.
Hi, how's everyone doing? Thanks for having me. So Mrs. Patterman, our athletic director, was unable to be here, so I told her I would gladly share with everyone some of the highlights and accomplishments, because anytime I get the stage, you know I love it. So let's start off with fall. Our first sport was golf. We actually had 23 golfers. We had 6 boys and a girl that attended or competed then at the IESA sectional. We had no state qualifiers. However, we have a young team. It's looking good for the future. It's looking good for the future. The second sport I'd like to highlight is volleyball. We had 19 7th graders on our volleyball team. We had 21 8th graders. Our 8th grade team actually went undefeated during the regular season. So kudos to them. Congratulations. Job well done. And finally, before I pass it off to the high school, we had a pretty successful cross-country season. Again, we were a little young, but we had 55 total athletes on the team. At conference, our boys team took 3rd place as a team, and Carson Kaiser took 3rd individually, and Caden Kaiser took 4th. Our girls team placed 4th at the conference meet, with Natalie Atenko, Ellie O'Connell, and Macy Jug all placing to help that 4th place overall ranking. And then at sectionals, Carson Kaiser and Caden Kaiser, both medaled and were IESA state cross-country competitors. So with that being said, congratulations to Caden Kaiser and Carson Kaiser for representing Kaneland at the state cross-country meet in Normal, Illinois. Caden finished 93rd and Carson finished 28th in a field of 233 runners. So that is a wrap-up of Harder Middle School fall sports. Thanks for having me, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Faulkner. That had a little bit of a Dr. Seuss to it with the K iteration. Thank you. Dr. Horn, thank you for coming tonight, and look forward to hearing your updates. Thank you.
Good evening. So I'm from, obviously, Dr. Horn from the high school. Our athletic director is at the National Athletic Directors Conference. So asked that I step in. We've got a lot to celebrate here. We had 394 student athletes participate in athletic activities throughout the school year this fall. So in order to speak best that, we have invited the coaches who have some of the players with them. I'm going to invite up first our boys and girls cross country coach. Chad.
Good evening. My name is Chad Clare. I'm the Kaneland's boys cross country coach. Doug Ecker was not able to be here tonight, but I had a couple of things to share on the back end of ours. On the boys side of things, we started off the year a little bit behind in that we had a few runners that we were looking for that were not able to be a part of our roster this year due to some health issues. So we had a lot of youth stepping up for us, which was great. At the Peoria meet where we ran 8th as a team out of 55 teams, that was a highlight for the varsity level. Frost Soft team took 3rd at the Eddington invite that we hosted. We hosted another new meet this year. It's a co-ed meet with East Aurora and Morris, where we use a handicap style format in that runners will go off the line at different times and wind up scoring the meet as it is. I would say the boys would probably say that one of their highlights for the year was winning the conference meet down in Ottawa this year. LaSalle, Peru. But it was kind of unexpected because the team that we thought was going to be the champion, Sycamore, had just run their best race of the season, but our young runners stepped up to the challenge, which is great because we get a lot of them back for next year. In October, we ran into some adversity as far as right after that conference meet. We lost 3 kids for their full strength, if you will, over the course of the 2 weeks in the regionals and the sectionals. In our sectional alone, we hosted at Kaneland on our home campus, and the top 3 teams in our meet wound up being the top 3 teams at the state finals. So we missed qualifying by about 9 points. But again, we bring everybody back, which is a great highlight. Something that our seniors will take away from the opportunity to be able to lead us, thrust into a new position that maybe they weren't looking as a possibility of doing from the beginning of the year. They did a super job. We're very, very proud of them. And we had 8 academic all-conference runners, including all 5 of the seniors that were in our program this year were academic all-conference, so we celebrate that. On the girls' side, Doug Ecker was not able to be here tonight. He had a church meeting that he needed to attend. One of the things that we would celebrate together is that our boys and girls programs, over the course of the season, we were looking at being optimistic and accountable, but we were also looking at serving and giving. We held a supply drive, a basic needs supply drive for Markland Home in Geneva, where both programs collected over 1,600 items for basic needs for the folks that are clients at that spot. And we both have fast feet and fast hands. We went to Feed My Starving Children with the girls team this year and set a building record for the number of packages packed in like 10 minutes, I guess. So anyway, a few highlights from our season. I think girls finished 2nd in the conference meet, and it was a great year. We're looking forward to being able to do it next year. Got the next one? Yep. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And representing our football program is our head football coach, Pat Ryan.
Hi, good evening. First of all, thank you for having us here tonight. Congrats to all the other sports programs on your accomplishments this year. I have 3 of our captains with us here tonight. They asked that I do the talking, but they're here and we'll talk about, I'll tell you a little bit about each of these guys, but this is senior Ryan Algram, Alex Panico, and Dawson Trebolo. Also, thank you to the greater Kaneland community for your continued support of Kaneland football. Friday nights at Peterson Field is pretty spectacular. It's a great place to watch a football game, and it's been great over the years. And you know, I'm glad that our community still comes out and supports us. Well, our team this year, we finished 7-4 with a 3rd place overall in conference. And a regular season finish of 6-3. We qualified for the playoffs in Class 6A. We won our first playoff game 35-14 over Riverside Brookfield, and then lost in the 2nd round to Prairie Ridge. One of the things I could say, you know, at 7-4 as a football coach, I sometimes look at that and go, oh, we could have done a little better. But when 3 of the 4 teams that beat us were playing in the semifinals, and one of those teams ended up in the state championship game, you feel a little better about how your season went. And so, you know, it was a really great year for us. This year we did host against Sycamore a military appreciation night. I'd like to send a thanks to Javier Martinez for coordinating that for us. It was a great event. We actually had good weather this year for it. Mr. Martinez, now that he's retired, has extra time. He was able to coordinate a Medal of Honor recipient to come out and talk to our team this year, to talk about the 6 pillars of the Medal of Honor character development program. And then we also had Kaneland alum and former player Taylor Andrews, who went to West Point's an officer in the Army, come out and talk to the boys right around that time. So we had a nice little tie-in right there around that military game. We did have a number of postseason awards for some of our individual players. Junior quarterback Troyer Carlson received Illinois High School Football Coaches Association All-State Honorable Mention. Kane County Chronicle All-Area Junior wide receiver Eric Johnson, junior defensive lineman Josh Mouthy were first team. Junior quarterback Troyer Carlson and senior Dawson Trebolo were second team. The Daily Chronicle, junior quarterback Troyer Carlson, Eric Johnson, and Josh Mouthy, and senior Dawson Trebolo, all first team, all area. Ryan Algram, who's here to my right, he's a senior captain. He's going to the University of Minnesota next year to play for Kaneland alum PJ Fleck at the University of Minnesota. And Ryan recently received an award, the number 65 honor roll. The number 65 honor roll is an award created in conjunction with the Patrick Manley Award to honor high school athletes across Chicagoland that best exemplify the following values: excellence, integrity, effectiveness, teamwork, and balance. If you're not sure who Patrick Manley was, he was a long snapper for the Chicago Bears. I think he played 18 seasons or something like that. Number 65 was the number he wore all those years. So it's a great honor for Ryan, and he's going to be very successful at Minnesota. Dawson was one of our senior captains. Usually this is weird because it's a spoiler because we haven't had our awards night yet. But Dawson was our team MVP this year, an all-conference football player for us. And Alex Panico over here was first team all-conference as well. And both Alex and Ryan will be receiving our Coaches Award, which is an award we give out to players that we feel kind of like our coaches on the field, that exemplify what a good coach would be and that they would make good coaches one day. So next year we open August 25th against Washington High School. See you there. All right, thank you.
Thanks. So for our next group, it's going to be a team effort for our cheer team.
Hello, my name is Anna Massa. My assistant coach is Kristen Lane, and we have Lindsay Yost right here. She was one of our senior athletes this year on cheerleading. This season we had approximately 36 girls with us. Granted, we are lacking number right now in representation. Our season is carrying on. For the winter season, they are currently working on their skills at tumbling tonight, so they couldn't come be here right now. But this season we went to all home and away football games and supported our football team, including those 2 playoff games. So we really appreciate that we got the opportunity to cheer for you guys. We held a camp over summer to improve on our skills, as well as doing our annual fundraiser at Elburn Days with our dunk tank. We did have a lot of fun, a lot of good team building, skill building. Anything else that you want to add, Lindsay?
I would just give a quick shout out. This is their first year coaching. They didn't mention that, but they did a great job. They made the season very memorable and special for everyone, so thank you guys. And we had amazing seniors and athletes. Lindsay, as you know, she's dedicated to everything, so we had many of them, athletes like Lindsay, to help us out.
Well, and thank you guys.
Yes.
You guys are graduates.
Yes.
You're Kaneland
Yes.
graduates.
We
so
are.
The fact that you guys are coming back to coach is inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're continuing on through the winter, and then we will have a little kids clinic, so we'll bring in the youth into our program, so supporting our varsity and high school athletes as well as our younger ones. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite Joe Hughes, representing our girls golf team.
All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you for giving us this opportunity and this forum to celebrate the athletes and to celebrate the programs. Such a great number of programs that are so successful here at Kaneland, and we're just happy to be one of those. I was able to bring with two seniors, Julia Skiba and Catherine Marshall, to come and help with some of the results from our season. A couple results I'd like to bring up. First, though, we were the conference champion of the I-8 for our third consecutive year. We also had 5 all-conference players, Julia and Catherine. Also, Aaron Wong, Meredith Nav, and Braylon Davis were also all-conference for us this year. We also had our media-voted player of the year on the female side was Catherine Marshall. That's such a big accomplishment for her to be the player of the year. So we'd like to go on with some further accomplishments as stated by our seniors. Right, Julia?
So the Kaneland girls golf team is a newer program. It's only been around for 3 years, and we really have one of the most hardworking, dedicated, and caring players of them all. We started our season placing first at our tournament, then second, and then we went to a glow-in-the-dark event, which we placed first at, which was really fun. All of our matches were won, so that we made us undefeated. Catherine made it to state this year. She placed 6th, which is amazing, and we're very proud of her.
I just wanted to add to that. Thank you to everyone. It's a long list, but I'll name a few. Board of Directors, thank you. Sports boosters, our AD, Mr. Rollman, obviously to the coaches, and then the Kaneland community for supporting girls golf. The program wouldn't be what it is today without your guys' support. It's just amazing what we've done. It's the perfect senior season, undefeated in conference matches to make it to state for me and Julia as seniors. Just unbelievable 4 years. So thank you guys.
Now for our boys golf coach, Patrick Carter.
Hello. Thank you guys for having us here tonight. We appreciate everybody's support this year and all the great compliments we've got on the golf team. We had 15 players on the team this year. I brought 2 of my players with me tonight. 2 of our captains for freshman sophomore team is Gavin Roberts, and he's a sophomore this year at the high school. And then Gabe Gooch is a senior, and he was our varsity captain. I'm going to pass it over to them and let them talk about the season.
So the fresh soft team only had 2 sophomores, so it was pretty dependent on incoming freshmen to do really well. And overall, we bonded pretty good. We played pretty well and had fun playing. We placed 3rd at the St. Charles North Invite, 2nd at the Rocket Invite, and we're looking forward to playing at the varsity level and helping motivate them for state and playoffs. Overall, we were around 500, playing some tough schools and tough invites, going 5-6, but in conference, we were 5-2.
At the varsity level, we finished 6-4 throughout all dual and tri matches with a conference record of 6-1. We started the year with a trip down to Bloomington at the Lincoln Way West Invite. We got 5th place in that, that was out of like a 20-something team. If I'm correct there. We placed 2nd at the Marmion and Sterling Invites. We placed 2nd behind Ottawa at our conference tournament. We were in 2nd at regionals and unfortunately did not send anybody to state at sectionals. But our highlights, we have a really young core. I think 5 of our 6 starters are juniors. And also on behalf of the golf team, I just want to thank the board of administration and KHS for supporting us. And we look forward to another great season next year.
Now for our soccer coach, Scott Perillo.
Thanks for having us tonight. Congratulations to all the sports teams for their wonderful seasons. I've got 3 seniors here, Andrew Davidson, Tyler Utzler, and Ethan Nitchie. They're going to do all the talking.
Thank you for having us here tonight. The boys soccer season was a successful one this year. The JV and varsity both finished 2nd in the conference, and the varsity finished with a record of 14-9-2. and Tyler can tell you about some of the accomplishments we had.
Putting this into perspective is what makes the record even more impressive. We had 15 players new at the varsity level this year, and we started the season off with a record of 2, 6, and 2. Although after that, we went on to finish the season with a record of 12 and 3. We won the Body Armor Sports Series invite by beating 3 schools that were much larger than us, as well as winning the I-8 conference tournament.
And we had 6 all-conference players. 1 player was all-sectional. 2 players were all-sectional honorable mention, and we had 15 academic all-conference players. Thank you very much, guys.
On to girls tennis, Beth Miller.
I do not have any seniors here to pass it off to, so it's all me. All right, so for girls tennis this year, we had 33 athletes on our team. 22 of those were returning players, and we had 11 that were like brand spanking new players that came up. That put us at 18 on varsity, and then we had another 15 on freshman, sophomore. The beginning of this season was unlike any other. We began it with a couple of unique challenges. In preseason, our fence was blown down in a windstorm, which also destroyed our windscreen. So luckily we were able to move our practices over to the middle school, but that also provided some challenges because we went from 6 courts down to 4, and we also had to transport our equipment back and forth. But having less courts was kind of a blessing because it got us used to playing with less courts because of a couple of weeks later, we lost one of our own courts to a snap net cable. So we had some kids that were out playing on the courts during a football scrimmage and they broke the net. But Mr. Rollman did a great job getting that fixed, and it was only displaced for about like 2 weeks is what we had. Despite all that, we did have season highlights. I know, shocking, but we took first place at the Rochelle Ladies Hub Invite. We had first place finishes at first and second doubles, and first and second singles, and also at first and third doubles. Our second doubles team took third place at that tournament. At conference, we had a third place finish with our first doubles, our team of senior Lexi Mayberry and junior Abby Schoaf. And that meant that Lexi took first, second, or third place at conference for all 4 years that she was on the team. So that was very exciting. Our sectional tournament did not get the result that we wanted. It turned out that our path to state had to go through Wheaton St. Francis, and we just were not able to get that done. But we did have 3 juniors who were on the sectional that got to go to sectionals, and they gained some valuable experience, and hopefully we'll be able to apply that next year. One final thing that we are extremely proud of is that out of the 18 athletes that we have on varsity, 14 of those are all conference honors. So that translates to, that's a 3.5 GPA or higher, which translates to about 80% of our varsity team. So they work extremely hard on the court as well as off the court, which is why they're not here today because we got finals coming up. So they're still at home working on that. But we are looking forward to another great, amazing season next year. Thank you.
And for our final coach this evening, representing volleyball, our head coach, Miss Cindy Violet.
First, I want to thank you for your support for the volleyball program, and it's also great to see alumni sitting here, volleyball player at the table. I'm going to have the girls actually talk, and I have my senior captain here, Meredith Mills. I also have a junior captain, Mia Vassallo, and junior Carmela Riel. So Meredith, it's all yours.
Hi. So overall, the Kaneland volleyball program was really successful this year. At the varsity level, we had an overall record of 30-7, and in conference, we ended with 13-1, and we are conference champs for the 3rd year in a row, and we made our 2nd year appearance at the Sweet 16. For all conference honorable mention was Ella Gatz, who sadly couldn't be here tonight because of volleyball. And our all-conference team was Rosie Carl, Sophie Knazer, Mia Vassallo, and me. And Mia Vassallo was also our MVP all-conference player. 10 out of our 15 girls on the team were academic all-conference, and the program never had to worry about ineligibility, which is good. Volleyball program also has high hopes for the future. Our sophomore team went undefeated, and we're conference champs for the 3rd year in a row as well. and our freshmen ended pretty good. Our A team ended with 14, 15, and our B team was 9 and 10. That's it.
Thank you, everyone. We're really proud of all of you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, share the same thing. Thank you for taking the time to come out tonight. And when you get home, make sure you tell your parents thank you too for all that shuttling you around, late dinners, early dinners, drive-through dinners, all of those things. Make sure you tell your parents thank you. Tell your coaches thank you too. So great work and good season. Thank you.
And at this time, it is okay to get up and leave. I know sometimes it's awkward. You're not sure.
Thank you, guys.
And it's fine.
It's all downhill from here.
Board members, not you. You have to stay. Board members can't.
2/3. That's what it is.
Doesn't she look like your mom? Yes. Yeah. She's pretty
good.
Yeah, they're not the by me, Catherine. Wow. I haven't seen her in a while. Oh. She's got tall. Yeah, come on. Runs past my house all the time.
Well, no, but I see her.
All right. We still have quite a few people in here. We will move right along. So tonight's consent agenda. Oh, you were done, right?
Yeah, we're done.
You don't have anything.
Yeah,
Okay.
I am now.
Anyway, okay, sorry. Tonight's consent agenda contains the following action items. The approval of parameters for accounts payable and payroll December 2022, the approval of the treasurer's report November 2022, the approval of minutes of the November 28th, 2022 regular meeting, the approval of personnel, the approval of the destruction of audio recordings from closed session meetings from June 2021, the approval of policies from press on second reading, and the following informational items: the student suspension data report, the field trip notifications, and the Freedom of Information Act or FOIA report. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Okay, this is the first opportunity, this is the first opportunity for public comments. We normally have 2 opportunities, but tonight we have 4? Is there one for the?
Just 3.
Just 3, okay. So there are 3. One is in particular regarding the levy. So this first one is a general public comment, and I don't know if anyone is, we don't have anyone signed up. Does anyone?
There's no one signed up.
Want to share anything in public comment in this first session? Okay, if not, there'll be other opportunities, and I will move on without going through the whole spiel. If that's okay with everyone.
But I so enjoy it.
So long. Okay, so we'll move on to new business, and the first thing is the public hearing and the approval of the tax levy. Give me a second here. So the first thing I will do is it is 7:28 p.m. and I am calling the public hearing to order. So I will call the public hearing to order, and I will ask Dr. Fuchs to give us a review. Then we take public comments, and then we'll close the public hearing, and then that's when we'll discuss. So Dr. Fuchs, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. If you will recall, I have an intern that is helping me this semester, Jennifer Eubanks, and she did the levy presentation for us. This is the second piece of that opportunity. So I'd like to ask Jennifer to come up to the mic, and she's going to share the levy information with the board this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fuchs. I appreciate that. With regard to the tax levy, the board approved the tentative tax levy on the October 24th meeting. There have been no changes since that time. But before we go over the levy amounts, there is a new law that we must state. We stated it on the October 24th meeting as well, but I have to do it during this time as well. So the Public Act 102-0895, which is effective May 22nd, 2022, created a new provision in the school code, section 17-1.3, entitled Disclosure of Cash Balances. This act mandates that the annual disclosure of school district cash reserve balances and all funds held by the district related to the operational levy be stated and any obligations secured by those funds. So we are using the fund balances as of September 30th, 2022. The education balance had $30,192,551. There is an obligation for Canon copiers of $221,788. The operations and maintenance fund has $7,912,537, and there's no obligations. Transportation, $5,795,156, and no obligations. Working cash, $1,772,519, no obligations. Land cash, $535,501, no obligations. Debt service, $10,300,323. Outstanding bond payments, $13,660,565. IMRF, $796,290, no obligations. FICA Medicare, $1,187,772 with no outstanding obligations. Okay. So now we're going to go back to what the levy amounts that we are asking for, and they are as follows. The education fund, $40,600,000. The operations and maintenance fund, $6 million. Transportation, $1,500,000. Working cash, $100,000. Municipal retirement, $650,000. Social Security, $850,000, and special education, $4,300,000, for a total operating levy of $54 million. The total operating levy represents a 6.87 increase over the taxes extended in the operating funds last year. The bond and interest levy is $12,351,090, and it represents a 1.7% decrease from the taxes extended in the bond and increase fund last year, for a total levy increase of 5.16%. Now, while the district will levy above percentage amounts, we expect to receive approximately 5.87% more than last year in the operating funds. The money received from the tax levy will help to provide programs, services, operating costs, and other expenditures in 2023-24.
Okay. So at this time, are there any public comments? And this would be specifically on the 2022 tax levy, keeping in mind our usual guidelines for public comment, which is 3 minutes or less, so everyone has a chance to speak. And a reminder that we don't generally respond to public comments, and any discussion would usually take place after the hearing is closed. So are there any public comments on the tax levy? Okay, hearing none, I will then close the public hearing at 7:33. And now, board members, we can have a discussion and then we'll vote.
The new law, does it not specify? I know we have contracts for fuel, and all kinds of custodial, but those don't count, just leases for some reason.
This is in bond payments.
Okay, it just seems odd that you
It
can
is.
have all kinds of other contracts, but just leases for some reason.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
All right, and then if I'm looking at the budget correctly, my brain isn't working right tonight. If I look at your forecast 5, it's 67 million, and this is the levy is 54. What's the?
That's if you added the total, it's 66,351,000. If you put the bond and interest and the operating levy together.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
I knew that was something simple that I was forgetting. Thank you.
Other questions, comments from the board? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. Hold on. I want to make sure I get it right. Yeah, it's not on here. Hold on. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion. The board approves the 2022 tax levy in the amount of $54 million for the operating levy, and in the amount of $12,351,090 for the bond and interest levy, for a total levy amount of $66,351,090.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to J2, which is the 2021-2022 audit presentations for the Fox Valley Career Center in Kaneland.
Yes, thank you. I will turn that over to Dr. Fuchs and she'll introduce Mr. Jim Gavin, our guest here tonight. So with that, Dr. Fuchs, I'll turn it over to you.
Alrighty, please come on up to the microphone, Tim. This is Mr. Tim Gavin, as Dr. Layden mentioned, and Mr. Gavin is here tonight to present the 21-22 audit for both Fox Valley Career Center and Kaneland. And if you'll recall, a couple of things. The board is receiving the presentation tonight. You'll have from now until the January meeting. If you have any questions, let us know. And at the January meeting then, I will ask you to approve the audits on the consent agenda. Tonight, if you do not want the hard copies of your audits, I'd be glad to take them back. You should have received electronic copies in your email with the board packet. And there's a box back there that we can put them in at the end of the meeting. So Mr. Gavin, thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. And first and foremost, we want to express our appreciation to Dr. Fuchs and her team and the whole business office for their cooperation. We do, as you know, 2 audits, and the process went very smoothly, as it always does. We realize we're an interruption in the day-to-day process, so always appreciated to have it go smoothly.
We like having the auditors here.
Really?
You don't have to say that, but I appreciate it.
I know.
I'll add a few
you.
points here. So the first report I'll cover in brief is the Career Center report. Again, both audits were conducted as of fiscal years ended June 30th, 2022. And the first item I'll mention for both reports, and I'll start with Career Center, is the only page in each report with our letterhead on it. In the Career Center report, it's page 1, titled Independent Auditor's Report. And this is where we have issued our, what we call an unmodified opinion, also known as a clean audit opinion. It is the highest level of assurance that we are allowed to give. The audit opinion is a result of our work, which consists of testing transactions and account balances on a sample basis, as well as evaluating the internal controls that are in place that protect the data that goes into producing these reports. So effectively, our audit opinion states that the report presented is fairly stated in all material respects. And I always say this, and I'll say this about both reports. If you don't read anything else in this report, read the management's discussion and analysis. In the Career Center report, it starts on page 5, and it covers, in mostly layman's terms, a description of how the report is laid out, some key financial highlights, a comparison of this year's numbers to last year's numbers, and some narrative description on why those numbers have changed. If you only read this section, you get a pretty good overview and summary of how their year went. But in terms of specific financial results, the first thing I'll bring your attention to is the balance sheet on page 15. Basically the summary of what you have, what you owe, and what's left over. Total cash balance is just over $1 million as of June 30th, with a net unassigned fund balance of just south of $400,000. Anytime you end the year with a positive fund balance is a good one. And the 2 pages later is the income statement, effectively. So the results of operations, and in my opinion, most important item there. Third line from the bottom, net change in fund balance. Fund balance did go up by just over $34,000 for the year.
I have a quick question.
Certainly.
Refresh my memory on why we have a fund balance for the Fox Valley Career Center, because we operate on a zero budget from my
Correct.
memory.
We keep a small amount, under $500,000 in fund balance in the event that they do not receive tuition payments from the other districts. That way Kaneland doesn't have to cover their payroll until those tuition payments come in.
Okay, thank you.
Otherwise, the report is fairly brief. It does include some informative note disclosures, which I won't go through in detail, but happy to answer any questions. The whole report is rounded out at the end with a budget versus actual presentation to see where you expected to be versus where you actually ended up, as well as some trend schedules on the Career Center's participation in the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. So those were the items on this report that I meant to cover. Happy to answer any questions on the Career Center audit.
There's more than one type of report, correct? Isn't there different, like we pay for, help me out, Julianne.
Sure. This is your annual financial report, but we do an annual comprehensive financial report. That's why ours is thicker, because we have 10 years worth of data on the statistical pages in the back of ours. And I believe it also has a higher level of detail within the report.
Yeah, I can point out some of the extra features in the district's report.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions on Career Center? For the district's report, again, same thing with the as Dr. Fuchs pointed out, it is a comprehensive report, which does involve some extra effort on the district's part. So some commendations there. The additional items include an introductory section that includes some additional components, including a transmittal letter that lays out a lot of additional context for the economic factors surrounding the district, as well as additional schedules toward the back of the report. As you mentioned, the statistical section, excellent for analysis, 10-year schedules on financial results, revenue capacity, management of debt, demographic and economic statistics, as well as some operating information. And because the district goes through that extra effort to put that information together, it has earned, and we expect will continue to earn, the ASBO Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting. So that is also presented here in the report. For last year's report, we fully expect this year's report to earn the certificate as well. This report also earned an unmodified or clean audit opinion. Same spiel about what the audit involves, with the addition of this report being required by state statute and Illinois State Board of Ed. Again, same spiel about the management's discussion and analysis. If you don't read anything else, please read that. That in this report does start on page 15 and obviously goes into an appropriate amount of detail for the size of the report being presented. And again, in terms of specific financial results, the balance sheet for the operating funds of the district is on page 29. And again, my eye always goes to the lower right-hand corner. You do have total positive ending fund balance of about 14 million, most of which is restricted. A lot of the money that we receive is earmarked for specific purposes, so it's reported accordingly. And then 2 pages later, page 31, the income statement for the funds of the district. In total, fund balance went up by just south of 1.2 million. The only fund that saw a decrease in fund balance was the Municipal Retirement Social Security Fund. We expect that fund to kind of go up and down year over year, with roughly staying flat if possible. Again, plenty of notes and additional schedules for further analysis. Happy to answer any questions on them. Very useful if you're short on sleep later, especially in the note disclosures. But at this point, happy to answer any questions on the district's report.
Anything? Anyone? Okay, thank you so much. Oh,
Absolutely. In addition to the financial reports, we also issue a management letter that accompanies those reports. So for the district's management letter, we had a couple of minor recommendations. The only new recommendation is purely advisory about new accounting standards that are upcoming. And then a few updates on comments that were issued in the past, most of which have been implemented, so they're no longer applicable, with the exception of the fund balance with deficit net position. The health insurance fund does currently have a deficit position, so we commented on that.
okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
We
so much.
appreciate it.
And again, this is just stuff to digest, and it will come back on consent. The full approval will come back on a consent at the
That
next
is
meeting.
correct.
Okay.
Yep, and if you have any questions, please send them in and we'll get you answers and we can go from there.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to J3 then, the 5-year financial projections presentation.
Okay, it'll take me just a second. I need to get the presentation out and get the clicker. And then we'll get started.
Oh. Are you giving yours back?
All right, this is an annual presentation for the board that we do. What it does is it helps us to look at trends and where we're headed. And so as we go through, if you have questions, please stop and we can discuss them. I still use the 5CAS software that was developed originally by PMA, and now they're owned by Frontline. So they've come a long way.
Are they kind of the only game in town?
Yes.
Okay.
You know what? The state board has a game and it's free, but it's not nearly as powerful.
Okay.
So, or you can do it manually. Todd's shaking his head no.
Thank
But
you.
otherwise, yes, great question. Because with all the changes that they've had, I often wonder the same thing. But they've put years of expertise into it, and it is a top of the line tool.
Okay.
So, in 5CAST, we have 5 years of audited reports. I've got this year's general ledger in there. We've got 5 years of tax levy extensions and rates, EAVs, enrollments, and then the district assumptions. I'll go through the assumptions and explain what they are. In the meantime, this is a pie chart that you see regularly. I give it to you for the budget, and then we also have it in the tax levy, and then now. It doesn't change much, but it just reminds you that a lot of our revenue comes from property taxes, specifically about 73%. So from the state, we get about 17%, and from the federal government, about 4%. Those percentages might vary by 1 or less each year, up or down, depending on what's happening. So then there are 2 parts to the financial projections: revenues and expenditures. So the first part are the revenues. With regard to revenues, because the property tax levy is such a large portion of it, I have to put in there our estimates or assumptions for CPI. And so the dark bars represent actual. The light bars represent the assumptions. So the light bars haven't happened. You'll notice that there are 2 5%. One is dark, one is light. One we know because we just did the levy for it, 2022. The other one, it's December, and we know that it's running around 8% and has 1 more month to go. So but we do know that gas prices are coming down. If I had to make an educated guess, I'm going to say that the 2022 CPI will also be capped at 5%. We will know that for sure in the middle of January. If it's wrong, I can update these very quickly and see what impact it has. But I believe 5% is very safe for the 2023 levy year. Please remember the 2022 levy that we just did will fund the 23-24 school year. The 23 levy will fund the 24-25 school year. Then the next 4 years, I used a 10-year average of 2.2%. Here's why I didn't use the 5-year average, because of the anomaly of those 5%. If you look at the previous 4 years, there's only 1 year, 2020, that is above 2.2. And so rather than going all the way to 2.9, I was more conservative. These are the assumptions that if the board wants to see something different, I can run whatever you want. In a minute, I'm going to tell you the impact. Actually, I can just show you. It's on 2 slides. If CPI changes by 1% up or down, that's an impact of a little over $500,000, about $539,000. So as we go through this process, and you're wondering, well, what if she was too conservative? You can use that number to say, okay, add $500,000 here, or if she was wrong, take it away there. But that's your number that tells you the sensitivity for CPI. Similarly, I have to put in the system the new construction. With regard to new construction, I did use the 5-year average, or I used a little lower than the 5-year average because it's dropping. This year, we're only supposed to see 8.4. We'll know that number in March or April when we get our final levy information. And so I use the same 9 million that I used the prior year. When we met with the villages, there's still not a lot happening in terms of growth. So I felt like 9 million was a safe number to be using. Similar to the CPI, if I'm too conservative or not conservative enough, the plus or minus on that is only 53,000 in total revenue. That has a much smaller impact on total revenue than the CPI. Other local revenue include the CPPRT, corporate personal property replacement tax. Something that you need to know, last year, that would be 21-22, we got about a little over 900,000 for the first time. It had been averaging around 350,000. So this year we budgeted because I get projections after the tentative budget in July or August. The Department of Revenue gives me projections for this year. And so I'm able to put that number in the final budget, which I did. And that's the number I'm using in these financial projections for each year. Once we know at the end of the year what we got, we can adjust it and plan accordingly for next year's budget until they give us a number to use. All other local revenue I've projected at current amounts, primarily because I anticipate not bringing any fee changes to you for next year. So last year we reduced our tech fee because we got that tech grant. So we dropped it back by $20, the revenue. But this year I'm not anticipating any changes. Again, these types of revenues are minimal compared to the tax levy. That's the big one.
Dr. Fools, just remind me, can you, why was it so much more this year?
So CPPRT is based on an old law, a grandfathered law that's on the books, and it has to do with businesses that were in or open in place at the time the law went into effect. And it's a tax on them for their personal property replacement tax. We used to be able to write off personal property many years ago as individuals. Similarly, businesses can. And so this tax is still on the books for some businesses.
Okay.
And we get those dollars.
Yeah, I think every year
Yeah.
it's always a small thing.
Well, that's just it. Usually I don't talk much about it
Yeah, yeah.
because 350,000,
Yeah.
it hadn't moved much. We got and we're not the only ones. Across the state of Illinois, CPPRT went up last year. So
Thank you.
you bet. State and federal revenue, for the purposes of the projections, I'm estimating the same amounts. With regard to evidence-based funding, we have now moved up a tier because we are moving closer to adequacy. With that being said, last year, our new monies from the state was around 80,000. So we won't know that amount probably until, again, July or August after the tentative budget. And so for the final budget, I'll put what we get in there. But for the purposes of these projections, I've left it the same until we know what monies the state is going to contribute.
You said we moved up a tier, so that means less money that we get from the state?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Because they think we're wealthier. Yeah. So our numbers show that.
Dripping in sarcasm?
None at all. State categorical grants, about the same. Sped and transportation are our big ones. And those are based again on reimbursements from prior year expenditures. They don't move much from year to year unless if the state reduces the amount available. Then they go down.
What was our IDEA funding this past year?
That's federal.
I know. I
Yep.
was just curious what it did in
And
that.
I would defer. 1,000. Yeah. We don't.
What's our head count? What's our child count?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I just.
That's normal. It is normal.
Is it?
It's about all we get. Yeah.
Okay. I thought it'd be.
It's just different.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, same thing for the feds, about 2.5 million there. Before I move on then, that covers the assumptions that I've used in the projections for revenues. There aren't that many, and we don't have a lot of control over our revenues. We're going to move to the other side, which are the expenditures. I'm not sure why that pie chart looks that way, but that's okay. Expenditures, salary, and benefits are our greatest amount, and that's at about 72%. The purchase services is at 12%, and that's because it contains our custodial contract. Supplies and materials, 6%. Capital, about 3%. Other objects, that includes our tuition for outplay students and Fox Valley. And then the others are nominal. So here are the assumptions that I've used on the expenditure side. The assumptions are important, and that's why I go over them, because anything that's an assumption can be changed or shifted if the board wants to see something, but you have to put something in there. So with regard to salaries, for KEA, we have one more year on their contract. So I've used the 4.29, which is in there. Then for FY25 and the remaining years, I've used the CPI that I've put in the assumptions. So if you'll remember, the 5% is for FY25. All other years are at 2.2. That's a practice that we began using a few years back. I used to put 0 in there so we could see what the amount was, but it's more realistic to use the CPI numbers. For Speak, we have 4 more years on that contract. The first year is 6.5, then 6, 5, 5. The last year I used 2.2, again being consistent with CPI. Administration and ed support staff, for fiscal years 24 and 25, I've used 5%. That's the CPI that I've got built in, and 2.2 for all remaining years. Data point, 1% of all salaries is about $394,000. This year, in my projections, I am using $150,000 for teacher lane movement. As the salary scale continues to increase each year, that number was creeping up. This year we had about $148,000 for lane changes. Lane changes for teachers are when they get more education. The salary increase that you see up above, that 4.29, that's their step. The lane changes are for additional education, and I put a hard number in there, 150. It may be higher or lower, but it gives us a ballpark.
So is it still, looks like it might not be anymore. Is it still kind of a ratio with retirements, right? Isn't those usually offset each other? Is that not the case?
They do, but in our system, on the next slide, you're going to see, I actually put the offset for the retirements in there, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. Yep. And I don't actually, I have the actual numbers in there. I don't have a total, like a hard number like this.
Okay.
Because I know what's in the retirement track. I don't know who's going to take classes.
But is it still washing out or not?
I would need to check on that.
Okay. I didn't
And
put you on the spot. Yeah.
yep,
That number seemed higher to me. That's why.
this number is higher. It
Okay,
used to be
okay.
125.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely growing.
Yeah.
So, in terms of what else is in the model, if you'll recall, I've got, this is the same as I put in there last year, 16 certified FTE for the Ignite Academy. If you'll recall from the last board meeting, Dr. Atkins and the Ignite team currently only have 7 FTE identified. So as they move through the spring, I'll be able to modify what actually becomes real, and then we can see what impact that has on our projections.
Was that about 50,000 per?
It is. It's 50,580.
Okay.
We'll get to that slide in a second, but yes, you got it. So in terms of other key expenditures, I still have 5% in there for health insurance. We'll let that ride for 1 more year. If it goes closer to 7 to 10, next year when I do this, I'll up or increase that number. But I'm gonna go with 5 this year and hope for the best. Purchase services, nothing different. We are getting we are bidding custodial services because that contract is over. Or will be over June 30th. So we put that out to bid. We'll know that, I think it's coming in mid-January. So I should be able to update that number in here. So that'll be helpful. I still have the other things in there. 5 buses, 1 year old, capital at $1 million, curriculum at 400, and technology at about 550. Those numbers are comparable to the numbers we used this year. PTEL is your tax cap. Right now, there are no changes to the law, but it seems like every year the legislators have it on their docket to make changes. So we still put that in here. In this model, I do have all the costs and savings from known retirements. There will be 27 over the next 4 years. I did increase the step and lane where we bring in new teachers. As you know, Dr. Atkins is struggling getting people at the lower end. And so I gave him a couple more steps in which to have some flexibility, especially when he's bringing in people that are hard to hire. Special education, psychologists, and those people, oftentimes they are coming in with master's degrees. And so we needed to increase that just a little bit. So when you were asking about the offset, Aaron, I actually go through and put in the numbers. And then so I can go back and look and see how that offset compares to the 150. And I can bring that, I'll put it in a Friday update and let you know.
Thank you.
Yep. It says that FY23 is an accurate base for projections. So typically I would just leave that be because it is. But this year I know I've got two big things that may or may not be happening. First of all, I know that the Stewart parking lot is not getting done. And that was a big number. And then I also know that the auditorium, we are struggling. And so we are still waiting for parts, so they're not moving forward. So I've taken 800,000 out of FY23 and I added it to FY24 in anticipation of those projects. So the, what do you call it? Revised budget, not real budget, but the revised numbers in here take that into consideration. In terms of the Ignite Academy expenses, except for additional FTE, those are included. Those are not in here. And so we're pulling those from wherever we can, mostly grants and extra dollars, but we still have some things to do there. In January, I'll ask you to approve the school fees. I'll get you a second quarter budget report. I'm very curious to see what December looks like and where we're at, because it helps to make sure that the numbers I have are still on track. So far they have been, but I like to see those quarterly reports. In the middle of January, so at your second board meeting, I can announce the CPI, and that'll be for the 24-25 school year, not 23-24, but the next one. So we'll get started and knowing what it is. And then I'll have my school bus purchase. Again, we need to get on the list with an official approval. This year, we got on the list in January and we received the buses in early November. Because the other districts, supply chain, the new buses didn't come, so they couldn't give up the 1-year-olds. And so I want to make sure that we get on the list. So this is the page where you go, what does this mean? Who cares? Let's talk about that. So in the chart, the top part of the chart are our revenues divided into local, state, and federal. The first year is this year's budget. Please remember, I've adjusted that by taking out that 800,000 in expenditures one time because of those capital projects. Then the next 5 years are your projections. After revenues are the expenditures, and then you can look at the surplus deficit line, row. So a couple things to point out. We know that our deficit is projected at 3.5, but as I mentioned, I took out some of the monies for the capital. So your deficit projected right now is about just under 2.5. This 21-22 school year, we projected a deficit of about 1.5. We came in a little over 400. So the swing was about, just call it under 2 million between budget and actual. And I did bring my report card to you on how we do with budgeting. And so you can take a look at that, and I'll go over it in a few minutes after I'm done with these projections. Then if you look, the surplus deficit row is cumulative. So anything you don't have a deficit on this year comes off of next year and gets better and better. So while we are still showing a deficit, some things to consider. FY24 has 16 FTE. I'm hopeful not to need all of them. So that would reduce that 3.5 million to lower. So that's a good thing. Depends on how many you
Yeah, I'm
use.
sorry, I'm mumbling.
Yeah.
Ignore me.
About 500,000 is what I would hope. Maybe we'll end up with not such a negative here, and whatever we don't end up with will come off of that one. And if you look then 25 through 28, you're at or under $1 million of a projection. So I feel like that's a good thing. The thing that has helped us most, just so that you know, is inflation. The 5% CPI, it hurts each one of us at home, but for the sake of the district, it's going to help us. So there's two ways to look at it, because you get the 5% on the levy.
You get the 5%, but you also pay on the other side. That's why that was the look on my face, is that
Yeah, we're gonna pay, and it won't stay like this, but for today, it looks better than it did last year because of the
most
fives.
definitely.
Yeah, so I feel good about that. At the bottom then, I did convert the last row into number of days fund balance. You know that our policy is 45. 23 is showing at 60. I believe it will definitely end somewhere above that. And then that will just carry on for the others. In terms of however much we don't spend, will carry forward toward the 45. Let's take a look at the report card, or what I call the financial history, and remind everybody how we do. So the purpose of this document is to share with you budget versus actual on the 4 operating funds. So in FY22 for our revenues, we received 2.7% more than we budgeted. Over a 5-year average, it's about 1.2%. So with regard to revenues, each year, we budget very closely within 1% of $64 million. With regard to expenditures, in FY22, we spent 99.6% of our expenditure budget. That's pretty close. With a 5-year average of 97.5. So just a little over 2% over 5 years. Then you have to take actual revenues over actual expenditures. Last year, we got to 99.3%. So we were within 0.7% of the budget. And over 5 years, it's about 98%, within 2%. So we work hard at getting it as tight as we can with the information that we have at the time that we have it. The last slide then is the picture. I like this one this year. I usually don't, because usually it goes straight down. This one starts to level out. And again, I credit that to inflation with our CPI. Couple things. I think I talked about all of these. I took out the 800. I just don't want anybody to know that I haven't changed the budget, because that requires you guys. I just took it out so that I could see what it might really look like. If you want to do a budget amendment, I would recommend doing it in the spring when we know more information. The deficit, as I mentioned, is cumulative. And if we end 22-23 closer to balanced, our deficit in 23-24 would be closer to $1 million rather than where it's showing right now. Again, this is probably one of the benefits of doing this financial projections is you can get a visual of where we're headed. And I like the fact that it's flattening out. Again, Ryan, you're right. It probably won't stay there. But for today, this is the information we have, and we can make decisions based on what we know.
And just it's kind of a question and kind of just, you know, for the good of the community that might be listening. If we were to pass the referendum, because it's earmarked for specific projects, so this won't change very much based on the referendum. And we cannot use any of that money toward anything operational.
That is 100%
It's all
correct.
bricks and mortar.
That is 100% correct. This won't change at all due to the referendum. However, when we get new facilities, maybe we'll see some operational savings. If we get a new boiler, things like that. But as a direct cost or expense of the referendum has no impact. That money is kept completely separate in a capital projects fund. It is only used for things that are on the ballot that we've asked for to be used for construction. And it does say on that ballot question, like components. I'm missing the word here. Like if you put a new classroom in, you get to furnish it.
Oh, okay.
Equipment. Thank you. Equipment. Yeah. But it's directly related to the project. Yes. Yeah.
I guess I didn't know this, or maybe I misheard it. Is there two different capital funds then? Is there are they even in different accounts?
So there is a capital fund.
Right.
And right now our capital fund is zero because you put referendum monies in there and then track it that way.
Okay.
The capital fund that we do is out of operations and maintenance, out of Mark's budget. Yeah. And there's a capital line item. There's a capital line item in the ed fund. There's a, where you buy driver's ed cars. In transportation, there's a capital line item for school buses and trucks, things like that.
Sure.
But this is the capital fund.
It's just for reference.
That's right.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yep.
Maybe we could use
All right, so in
Yep.
January, we get the maintenance contract results.
Mhm.
And there's a couple other big things that are coming.
CPI will know
All right.
for 24-25.
So what I'm kind of wanting to ask you is, do we get a halfway through update, or will we get a third quarter update? Because just to kind of see where we're at.
Financial projections?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can do it anytime. Why don't I wait? Let me think what would probably be best. I could do it at the end of January just to see what CPI does, if it changes.
Well, I'd be curious, the maintenance contract's a big number too. That's why I was kind of,
That I can just tell you.
but it,
But I can show you too.
that's what I was
Yeah.
hoping for.
Put that number
Yep.
in.
Yeah, the other,
Because we get all spring long.
I know there's a bunch of stuff, but I was just thinking like
Yeah.
big numbers that are gonna move the needle one way or the.
That's right, levers.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'll make that note.
I know the board has gone through all of these assumptions in detail over the past few years, but I do have one question about health benefits.
Yeah.
What's our like 3-year average on that number, or 5-year average? Do you have any of that information close at hand?
Mm-mm. But I will get it.
Thank you.
Yep.
It's varied. There was
Was it
one or two really
13%?
high years, and there
Yeah.
was a 0 year, I believe. So the average itself is probably gonna be a little bit over 5 or around 5, but they've
You
gone
want-
across the board.
Yeah, 3 or 5 year.
5 is fine.
5.
Please and thank you.
Yep, I've got it, just not with me.
Yeah, I didn't
Yep.
figure you did.
Health insurance, and then I'm gonna get, I'll give that to you in the Friday update. And then for Aaron, I'll get the spread between lane change and retirees. No problem at all.
I guess just to expand on what I said, before some of you were on the board, we spent a summer going over each of these assumptions and deciding whether we wanted to go up, down, or sideways to get to these numbers. So you're free to change them at any time, but we have spent a bunch of time on figuring this out. That's panned out in your report card.
Yeah, and where Dr. Fuchs starts, it's, based on her expertise and things like that. And so and then you give us the variance so that we can, and she'll also, I shouldn't say this, but if you go and sit in her office, she can actually change all the numbers immediately and show you all of them.
See in real time.
If you really want to
Number
sit and
magic.
watch the show.
That's just fun.
I know. It's a spreadsheet.
You need a hobby.
How could it not?
An audit.
Yeah.
An audit.
She likes the auditors. She
I
likes-
don't wish an audit on anyone, please.
Okay.
Recommendations?
Thank you.
Good.
I appreciate it. I'll get you an
Should be on
update, end of January.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, the next item, J4, is the discussion and approval of E.O. Sullivan Consulting for Educational Community Engagement.
Yes, as we have considered and, excuse me, we've had a great deal of dialogue as we move towards the referendum and question in April. One of the things that we had spoken about internally with our administrative team is following up with E.O. Sullivan as far as direct community engagement consultant. We have worked with them closely, as you know, over the last year with our engineering firm, Wold Ruck Pate. And at this time, based on the fact that we are moving towards the referendum and want to start the information sessions after the holiday. So in January, one of the things we wanted to do was reach out to E.O. Sullivan and find out exactly what their fees would be to work with us, what they would provide to work with us, and how they would communicate with our community, the steps they would take, the measures they would take. So what we did, Dr. Fuchs and I looked closely at this. We also looked at a timeline and engagement activities, and we also looked at recent successes that they've had with a couple surrounding districts that were coming off of no votes. So that was really interesting to see that both Barrington and Wheaton both were coming off failed referendums, as well as Wheeling and Berkeley school districts coming off referendums that were unsuccessful, and then working with E.O. Sullivan, reshaped some of their strategies that we would use and implement to communicate with our community in the same way. So what we're looking for, and the cost, I always realize that the $20,000 cost generally is that budgeted for? How are you going to account for that? So Dr. Fuchs and I, to answer that question, already went through a couple line items that we have, excuse me, and saw that in a consulting line item that I have that we keep for purposes throughout a year. Should we need a consultant for strategic planning? Should we need it for finances? Other plans? We have that at 10,000, which would be half of the 20,000, and then also a budgeted amount for legal right now is outpacing what our anticipated cost is going to be. So without increasing the budget, we can just utilize some of the dollars we already have budgeted to cover this. And the other important part we want to note is, along with this, they have a referendum side for the referendum committee. It's called Core Strategies. So while E.O. Sullivan would work directly with the district, Core Strategies, who also works closely with E.O. Sullivan and already knows our district, has our survey results, knows our demographics, they would work separate with the referendum committee, and there is no cost to the referendum committee for that. They work to fundraise with the referendum committee. So the referendum committee would get Core Strategies as an aside to the district utilizing E.O. Sullivan for our services January through April, leading to the ballot question.
So just to clarify, we're only paying for the factual presentations that the district is allowed to do by law. And then should a referendum committee wish to work with E.O. Sullivan, they could, And that is based on, there must be some kind of like a, what's it called, commission or something off fundraising dollars,
Yes.
I would think.
That must be how they.
I mean, because it's not free.
That's
really.
how they're going to get paid.
So but that would be up to that part is up to
Yes.
the, the get out the vote, and the vote yes part is up to a committee and not up to the district. So this is just for the factual.
Yes, the information sessions, the community flyers, any engagement, focus groups, surveys, all of those things. That's what the 20,000 is for the informational side from the district.
Okay.
And as we looked at almost like an investing kind of thing, we're looking to try to get $57 million in April and a $20,000 investment to work with E.O. Sullivan that has been successful with a few surrounding districts in challenging times. Is a valuable, we believe, that's why we brought it to the board, as a valuable endeavor, especially given if we are not successful, then we have to wait a whole calendar year till April of 24 at that point for any follow-up referendum.
So would this be somewhat of an offset? So, we have the information already. So would we just turn it over to them so that normally what you and Dr. Fuchs would be doing to prepare for these types of events, like the informational sessions and things like that, you would then be freed up to do something else?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, not on a one-to-one basis. I don't mean that. I just mean there is some offset in not having you guys have to do this part.
Yes, the time and the compilation of doing that with their expertise, I'm sure they already have a lot of that ready to go to input and plug in our district information, as opposed to Dr. Fuchs and I starting from scratch and creating some of that. Not completely from scratch, because we had a referendum in 2008, so it's not completely fresh, but we could pull that back out.
My kids were in elementary school. Now they're graduating college, so it's been a while. It's been a while. Been a minute. So. Yeah. Some of you might have still been in college. No, I haven't.
Any questions?
No, I'm in favor of the board approved the bond issue. This just seems like something that would help that issue pass. So
We agree.
sounds good to me.
We'll keep you posted as we move forward and work with them.
But we do have to vote on this one, right?
Yeah.
Does anybody else want to say anything before we do?
I mean, I'm concerned with what return we're gonna get on the investment, whether or not these dollars are gonna return the results that we're after.
I don't know how we would know that, though.
I mean, at first would want to ask for data, but I don't know that we have data based on the current situation. So it's difficult, we can't go out and say, oh, well, what have you done the past 10 years? Because now we're in a totally new environment. So,
True.
I don't know.
Yeah, we're in a new environment, new district, new amount of money. So it's, while you can look at their past performance, it's not going to necessarily. Past performance doesn't indicate future success, or whatever that investment statement is that you hear all the time.
That's pretty good.
Especially in brand new environments.
Yes. Financial times too.
So
that's my 2 cents. I personally am not ready to. I mean, obviously, consensus of the board. I don't know that I would be behind it as an individual.
And I guess that's my hesitation too. I struggle that they've only given us 2 schools that went through this process, lost a referendum, then E.O. Sullivan came in. So I guess not knowing more of what their history is, not even their performance, but what else they've done.
Well, they didn't provide any data on how many schools they were successful with the first time around either. So
I actually have about 6 or 7 more that were in the informational flyer they gave us, but we don't have every single one of their return that data.
And it's also going to be dependent upon how good the referendum committee performs its task too. I mean, this is just one piece of a multi-tiered system that our referendum committee doesn't exist or doesn't do anything, doesn't matter if we spend this money. So there's many things that you have to factor into one decision.
Which is why I would be more inclined to withhold spending the money. To me, it's more important to, and I don't know how we support that committee, but to focus on that rather than.
I think this is how we support that committee.
There are very few other legal ways we can support the committee.
This is about the only way the board can. I mean, because our hands are tied for pretty much every other method.
And how much input do we have on this? I mean, I'll be full transparency. E.O. Sullivan, kind of some of the stuff they did, the language that they used or the verbiage, or like it didn't translate to our community members. And so I kind of struggle with them being the ones going out there again for us and trying to speak for Kaneland.
Translate?
Well, there's a lot of community members that were like the front door, you know, like there was certain things that.
I think that was the architect, though,
Yeah,
wasn't
that
it?
was the architect.
But in their surveys and their focus groups, and I mean, it's just some of the stuff that E.O. Sullivan did.
So
like, did they understand Kaneland? I guess was my concern of getting that message across, because I think we missed a few things, you know, when it came to, like you said, yes, maybe it was the architect, but the architect, you know, so I don't know.
It was incumbent upon us, Dr. Lade and myself, to review everything that went out before it did.
Yeah.
And so if we missed it, we'll work harder not to miss it.
So I guess that's what I'm wondering. How much input do you guys
We had
have?
100% input.
No, I meant this time. Like if we do this,
100%?
Yeah, we
still.
will again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So even though Teresa mentioned that we wouldn't be developing it, we will be overseeing it and having ample opportunities for input. At least that's what I found with them the first time.
Same thing with Wold. Same
Yeah.
thing, we work with them for presentations.
Absolutely.
It's the same thing. We review all of that and have the right to review all of that before it goes out.
And I guess what I would say is sometimes things that make sense to us is because we're living it. Maybe we'll ask a few other people who aren't living it to read it before it goes out. We did that before, but maybe we need a little more variety to be sure that we're looking at it from different perspectives.
Hitting all the targets.
Yeah.
Do they actually run the information sessions and things like that? And does their fee take into account, you know, that we're a lot bigger district than a lot of places they worked with?
Yeah.
You know, they're going to have to go into, so, you know, they're going to have to be in different places in the district and things like that.
When we did the community engagement forums, we worked with them to set that up, how I presented a few of the slides, Dr. Fuchs presented some of the slides, and they presented some of them. So as far as the format, whether we're presenting or they're presenting, that's entirely up to us, and we can control that also, how much that we do, how much they do, and what we create, the timing of when we meet, how often we meet, whether we're in the buildings, whether it's local coffees, we work with them on all of those things.
And they're not limiting it in the contract? I didn't see that anywhere. Like, they don't say, you know, this $20,000 just gets you 2 informational sessions, you know, like, because it just seems like, what if we wanted a lot more than they're envisioning? I don't know.
Yeah, there's not a limiting number in there, because it just said that there will be several forums, several tours, off-site, on-site surveys, some other additional means of communication that we work with them on.
I think one of my concerns is, so they can hold these forums, they can hold all this information, but how are they announcing it to the people? How are the people finding out? I think that was one of the difficulties initially was, you know, a lot of people didn't know, and it got to the point where I felt like I wanted to go on social media and be like, hey, this is going on, whether one side or another, just to inform people. I think that's the biggest thing that's holding me back is you know, to what extent are they attempting to engage the community? I think we're going to be fighting a lot of, not fighting, but people are going to have difficulty increasing their taxes. I mean, at the end of the day, they're going to look at it as an increase in taxes. Whether or not there's a need, I could sit here all day and explain. We could show them, but selling it. So I don't know. I'm hesitant to spend 20 grand, but at the same time, what else are we gonna do? You know, what's our other options? Like you guys said, this might be our only option.
You know, if we had a full-time communications director, you know, some of this could be handled by that type of a position. You know, we've never had one, so this kind of helps with that a little, I guess. I don't know.
100% helping us.
And I would also add that Kaneland will always have that challenge because we have so many different municipalities to work with. If we were one community, such as a Batavia or a Geneva, with a local newspaper in that community, it's always easier. But communication with the 9 to 10 villages and municipalities, that has always been our challenge. And so I think what Teresa said earlier is one of the strategies we used in 2008 is I went to each of the elementary schools. We went into neighborhoods at that time. Many of them were newer. And we went into homes and did small coffees, small group meetings, and got out not only in the north, but in the south, all areas to try to beat that challenge of communication.
We tried Lions
Yeah.
Club, senior centers,
Yeah.
American Legion, you know, because you try to engage that part of the community as well, because there's a big voting block.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was, again,
Yeah.
that's the referendum, vote yes stuff, but the information needs to get out to those people as well.
Yes.
So. Anybody have any more questions, or should we move forward? So, okay. So I move that the Board of Education directs the administration to execute a contract with E.O. Sullivan Consulting to serve as the educational community engagement consultant at the cost of $20,000.
Second.
Okay, let's see what happens. We'll have a roll call, please.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
No.
Can we get Mr. Carey?
Not yet, but aye.
Mr. Carey.
Okay, so motion carries 5-1. And perhaps as you get more information, you know, that answers some of the questions and things like that, maybe you can share them in the updates, and we're here at a meeting and
Yes, we will do for sure.
as we move forward.
Yes, we will do that. We will regularly communicate.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so that concludes new business, and we move on now to the superintendent and board report.
Yep, first one, I don't know if Lindsay's gonna mention it or not. Are you gonna mention the holiday break?
Yeah.
Okay, then I will not. I'll let you have that. So the other items that I have, ROE compliance visit, as you know, annually, they come into the district. They are here December 14th to the 16th, ensuring that we have every legal obligation met by the state and by state code. So that's 3 days of compiling records, improving all that work. Some of that, Julie Orfel has been super helpful on that thus far.
Looking forward to it.
Compliance is fun. Next thing, Hall of Fame Committee. Board member Mankivsky attended last week with me at the Hall of Fame Committee. Do you want to provide an update, or would you like me to?
Why don't you go ahead?
Okay. The December, end of November, beginning of December meeting is always to look at the applicants, because that's when the application window closes. It closes typically December 1st. We meet to look at the nominees and applications, and at that point, we look to make sure that they have all of the necessary requirements to be considered for the February vote. So we make sure that they have resumes, letters of support, and we have 5 or 6 that would be on the ballot for February. So we will reaching out to people for letters of support, making sure all of that is ready, and we will collect that information and then again vote later next semester. And then the other item we touched on was, again, it's the 25th anniversary of the Hall of Fame, and we have 3 scheduled events to celebrate. We have the fall football game that we've already had. We have an upcoming basketball doubleheader, boy-girl doubleheader in January, on January 21st. And we also have an April date at, I think it's going to be either a concert or the spring musical. So we'll have that, and to bring all of our former inductees back to recognize them. Board Member Mankowski, did I miss anything?
No, you essentially summed it up. The next big event is that basketball game, boys, girls, I believe 21st,
Yes.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Thank you. District information, I was hosted last week or 2 weeks ago and had about 18 to 20 parents show up to go to our different workshops or stations, and got several pieces of feedback. And I know that a lot of it was ed services related, and I know Mr. Raleigh is putting together some information and sharing that back to some of those families that had questions. And then also wanted to share too that based on topics for future agenda, I know it ended up not being an agenda item, but more of a weekly update. Know that I'm working on the board member transition piece that I think maybe Aaron brought up, or Meg, just more information. We'll be putting that together, working on that, and then I'll share it with the board in January, February, as we begin to have those transition meetings, just so that everybody who's currently on the board also sees what the new board members will be going over and receiving at that meeting. And that's all I had. I know Dr. Fuchs has at least one.
Yep. I had a FAC meeting last Thursday night, and we had a quorum, so that was really good. I had invited Bob Lewis from PMA into the FAC meeting. The purpose of his participation was to review the opportunities for if the referendum passes, how we will structure the bonds in terms of our overall district debt. And I plan to invite him to one of the January board meetings so that the board can see what our choices are and make a decision. The purpose of that decision, or the result of that decision, will be something that gets communicated through the referendum campaign in terms of how much taxpayers can expect their taxes to increase. Because there's different ways to structure it. And so we'll talk about that in January. And the FAC had a preview, asked some good questions. They want to see one more iteration. And so they had some good feedback for us.
Good. Okay, so here's my little update on the high school. So we'll start with sports. So for our winter sports are fully going, as you guys know. Our boys varsity basketball team, just within these last 2 weeks, some of the big wins that they have gotten have been against Sandwich, Marengo, Rochelle, which is always a tough one, and then West Chicago and Ottawa. And our next home game that's coming up is going to be Saturday the 17th. And then currently the team is 8-1 overall and 3-0 in conference, making them first in Interstate 8, which is pretty cool. And then for our girls varsity basketball, the team has also been doing super well. They've won some big games against Rochelle, Sycamore, and Sandwich. And the team is 5-4 overall, and then 3-0 in conference, also making them first in Interstate 8. And then also, boys wrestling is going on. They have won against Morris, Bartlett, Woodstock. Those have been the biggest ones lately. And their next home wrestling match is this Wednesday, the 14th. And our boys bowling beat Ottawa. And then for fine arts, the biggest thing coming up is our magical dinner this weekend. This is the 16th through the 18th. And I just want to let you know, as you guys know, they're super talented, but these tickets for the magical dinner sell out really fast. So if you are interested in getting them, make sure to get on that. And yeah. And then they just finished up their tour of the schools. I know they went to all the elementary schools and middle school, and they also just performed at Holiday in the Grove. And then for clubs, I've mentioned this, but February 25th is going to be the winter dance this year. We haven't done something like this in a while because we had Winterfest, which was like my freshman, and then COVID happened. But we're going to try for a winter dance this year. And also, the skiing and snowboarding club has started up again, which I don't know if you guys knew, but that is a thing at Kaneland High School, and it is very fun. And some reminders is that next week, Monday and Tuesday, are finals, and then Wednesday is the makeup day for finals. So this is kind of the last push to the end of the semester. But we are off for break on Wednesday, December 21st, and then I believe we come back January 9th. And then, yeah, since we don't have a meeting until way into the next year or whatever. Happy holidays, everyone, and I hope you have a great break.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So moving forward, topics for future agendas. Anyone? Nothing? Okay, this is the the third opportunity, but the second general opportunity for public comments. And no one has signed up. Does anyone have a public comment? Okay, hearing none, we will move forward. We do have a closed session tonight. And there will be no action taken following the session. Therefore, after the vote to go into closed session, the recording of tonight's meeting will be concluded. We're going into closed session to discuss under the Open Meetings Act, Section 2C1, which deals with personnel and employment. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn or to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call.
Mr. Mankowski.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.